me a signal when you're
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of RedShark Live. If you've been here before, you know the format of the show. We've got a great show lined up for you today. If you're new, this is just an informal chat. It's people working in the industry, talking to people in the industry. There's so much going on. We've got a lot to pack into the show today. Let me just start, as ever, by saying thank you to our sponsors, Matrox, who are a fantastic company. They've really got behind this idea, and if you think you're viewing a good quality picture, which we're looking at it from here, and it's really good. So just bear in mind that that is due to the Matrox Monarch encoder, and it's a kind of streaming appliance, and it does a fantastic job. It takes a high quality signal in and gives you a high quality signal out, and it's very deterministic, it's reliable. We would be using this, I think, whether or not we had Matrox sponsoring the show. But thanks again, Matrox. Let's move on very quickly. In today's show, we're going to be talking about the World Cup. We don't know anything about football. Well, that's just me, but we've been incredibly impressed by the quality of the coverage, and again, it's technology that's made that possible. We're going to move on from that and talk about the surprise announcement by Blackmagic of their external GPU, their eGPU. Taken everybody by surprise, and necessarily so, because when you're working with Apple, you don't let information leak ahead of times if you're a partner. And then, now, this is really something. This is a world first. If you're watching this, you're going to see something nobody's ever seen, which is a live comparison of the Sony FS5, let's call it the Mark I, and the Sony FS5 Mark II. Live comparison with a split screen, if we can figure out the right buttons to push on our switcher. And we've been doing this, we've been rehearsing this, and we see a significant difference between the two cameras, and we're hoping you'll be able to see that as well. So what we're going to do now is there'll be time for questions, of course, afterwards, and do also go to if you're watching this on the YouTube page, do leave comments and ask questions. This is an interactive show, so we always have time for questions afterwards. Anytime during the show, if you have any feedback, let us know. I'm going to ask Simon to come over from the desk and take his rightful place on the sofa. Simon Wyndham, RedShark's esteemed deputy editor, and we're just going to run through some of the stuff that's happened recently. First, just of all, quickly, and really mainly as a plug for the fact that I'm over there. Mainly as a plug for the fact that we have made a podcast that is about World Cup technology. It's a great listen, and I think one of my colleagues is going to put a link to it on the comments in the YouTube page. So welcome, Simon.
Good afternoon.
And just quickly, I mean, there's what we were saying in the podcast. I know you weren't on the podcast, but you've heard it. What we were saying in the podcast is that there's some not only some incredible technology behind the World Cup, the cathedral-like virtual studios, but there's also the remarkable fact that the camera operators often have to be up on one of those massive cherry pickers 80 feet above the ground for hours and hours.
Yeah, it's incredible. I'm astounded by how they manage to do it, and
to such a high level.
Yeah, it's a high level. How they keep their energy levels up, I've no idea. There must be some trade secrets going on there.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder. And as Mark McCarthy, who took part in our podcast, pointed out, these guys have to regard every moment as if they're live.
Yeah.
Because in a fast game like football, you don't get all the niceties of, camera number 15, I'm switching to you in 30. It's like bang, 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 bang. Everybody has to assume that they're live.
Yeah. And it's, I guess it's, as was alluded to on the podcast, these guys are together a lot of the time, so they become effectively almost like a military special forces unit.
Yes.
And they're able to work together in such a well-oiled way, but even still, my hat goes off to them. If I had a hat,
yes. So anyway, this is live television, folks. The next thing I want to move on to is talking about the eGPU.
Yeah. And
this just kind of came out of nowhere. Now normally it's not a secret that normally I'm given some kind of advance warning, sometimes given all the information, and we tend to sign non-disclosure agreements. So, and these are we treat these very, very seriously. So if we sign a non-disclosure agreement, I won't even discuss this with my colleagues, and I have to behave as if I don't know. But in this case, I suspect because this was a deal with Apple,
yes,
there was no advance warning. So
it's a bit like the ProRes announcement as well, wasn't it, from Atomus? Very similar thing.
It was similar. It was similar. Yeah. So Simon, just very briefly, tell us what this thing is.
Okay. So yeah. So it's an integrated eGPU, and I guess it's a connectivity hub as well, because it has additional Thunderbolt 3 ports, HDMI out to the monitor. And it uses a GPU. It's all built into an integrated unit, so the cooling is designed to function for that specific unit, and therefore they can keep the size to within a certain size. And it works with Macs, and specifically, I can imagine it works very well with DaVinci Resolve. They say there's no reason why you couldn't connect it up to a PC, in fact, but I'm not sure of how much success people would have with that. But I believe they have
said drivers.
It's not out of the
drivers and OS support and all that stuff.
Yeah. But eGPU support for the Mac has been getting better.
Yes.
But there's always been the question of which GPUs work best, which unit do you use to plug your GPU into to use it with. This makes it a plug and play operation, really. No faff, it should just work, which is a big thing for people like me. I know some people won't be satisfied with the particular GPU, but they've got to understand that this is a specifically designed unit, and it overcomes obstacles that you would have otherwise. For example, if you were to use a much more powerful GPU, there are cooling issues and they would cost a lot more money.
I mean, I know a couple of people said in the comments that, it's not the very latest unit, it's not the fastest unit, but look at the cost. This isn't just a bare graphics card, is it?
No,
it's a bespoke, cooled device with an additional power supply and additional ports.
Yeah.
And my response to that was, well, have a look at the price versus performance. Does it give you a significant performance increase for what I think is a relatively low price?
Yes, and don't forget also that they're putting particular emphasis on how quiet it is, because obviously the more powerful a GPU you have, you need better cooling, which can obviously increase the noise in a production environment, which is not necessarily what you want.
And so more power, more cooling, and you get into this vicious circle where to deal with the power and the extra cooling, and the soundproofing, it's almost exponentially more expensive, isn't it?
Yeah. I think, you know, some people can put too much expectation on things. We're talking about something that is designed primarily to be used with something like a MacBook Pro. If you have a dedicated workstation, you're not going to need such a unit. You're going to be able to put in or have a really powerful GPU already in that machine. You're just not going to need it. This gives an appreciable increase in graphics power to a laptop that you can take around with you. It's portable and can be used in that way. So, you know, we have to be very realistic about what to expect with these things.
Now, what I find very intriguing is for a long time, you know, you and I have been writing for a long time, and I remember writing 12 years ago, like when we had Firewire, or even longer ago than that, but saying that, you know, the topology of a PC is being exploded.
Yeah.
So it's being externalized. We still saw the beginnings of that with Firewire, which you know, modern external connection like Thunderbolt 3, Thunderbolt, and PCIe, they make Firewire look like a piece of shoelace.
Yes.
In comparison.
Yeah.
But I think we're in a stage now where the incredible speed means that you can externalize virtually everything. And at that point, what Apple said about a modular Mac Pro begins to make sense.
Yes. Yeah.
So in other words, if you, for example, use PCIe as the external connection, you have virtually a bus speed connection. Yeah. And why wouldn't you then have like stackable modules?
Speed opens up so many possibilities.
Yeah.
Just the simple thing of having much more speed on a connection changes the way that you can do things.
Yes.
And that's, you know, a very good example. And, you know, we have to ask whether in the future, is this how we're going to be looking at building our computers? You know,
yes.
Rather than having a great big box that we put everything into, we could just have very convenient, compact external accessories. Some people will like that, other people will go for it in a big way. But
all right, well look, that's just a thought. Don't read anything into these comments. This is pure guesswork. So now we're going to move on to the FS5s. Now we have here what I think is a pretty unique demonstration. Simon, do you want to hop off back to the desk and set this up? We're a bit short of staff today, so Simon's having to do 87 jobs while I only have to do one. But what he's going to do, we've got two FS5s here side by side at almost the same angle. We've got the original FS5, which, if you remember, is very closely related to the FS7, but, you know, pitched in terms of its market position slightly lower. And then we have a new model, which is the FS5 Mark II. Now, if you look at them, you can't tell the difference. There is a tiny cosmetic difference. And the big deal is that the FS5 Mark II has new color science. So, and the even bigger deal than that is that this color science comes from the same source as that which was used to design the Venice camera, which is famously good with color, emotional transparency. What do we mean by that? Well, it's not just magical thinking. It is the genuine ability to convey the emotion in an image through to the display, and then through you know the viewer's method of perception through to the part of their brain that actually generates the emotion, and that same technology is now exhibited in these. So if you want to switch across to them, what we're going to do, we've got our beautiful model sitting here. It's called David Shapton, and the first thing I'd say about this camera is it makes me look as if I've got no hair. So I don't know how they've done that. They'll have to fix that. But Can you set up the split screen?
So this is the initial. This is the 2 that we're looking.
This is the new camera.
Yeah.
Don't forget the what we call the old camera, the Mark I, is still on sale. It's still a current model, and it still has a look that you might want to retain. Now, I'm not sure how well this is going to show up, because of course this is a very high quality stream, but it's going to depend. I need to give you all kinds of cautions here, because A, this is not scientific. B, we're using lights that I know have a very imperfect spectrum. C, both of those above. So please do not use this as scientific or even authoritative. But what I think is interesting, even with those cautions in place, we can certainly see a difference. And the differences are, I think, that if you look at the light reflecting off my head, on the left side of your picture, which is the FS5 Mark I, you've got you can see that the highlights are kind of blown out. Not that you'd want to see the detail of the back of my head, but if you compare it with what's on the right hand side of the picture, which is the FS5 Mark II, it's smoother. There seems to be more detail in it, and there's more detail in it because the highlights are not blown out to that extent. Do you agree with that, Simon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a much smoother roll-off.
Yeah. Simon hasn't got a mic on, but he's saying it's a smoother roll-off. And I don't know, Simon and I disagree about this to some extent. I think there's a little bit more detail in the shadows too. It's hard to say. And also look at that tree behind me. On the right hand side of the FS5 Mark II, I think there is more detail in that. The colour, I can tell you by looking at the tree myself, the colour is more accurate. Do you agree with that, Simon?
Yeah, I would definitely
yeah.
agree with that. It's much more natural.
Yeah, and I think probably how I'd sum this up would be to say that you are getting a picture that you can use more readily straight out of the camera in almost any context. You know, because the big raw video and log video, both of which then need extensive grading, are fantastic in terms of the the flexibility that they give you to have the kind of image you want. But I don't know, what's the percentage we say, Simon? You were saying earlier that the vast majority of people out with a camera like this don't have time to grade.
You want something that you can use straight.
Yeah.
Can we just show the graphs for them? If I split screen it a bit more to the
yeah.
so you can see that the one is handling that graphs in the background.
Yeah.
I don't know if people can hear me.
Yeah. So Simon's just opening up the split screen so we can look at the grass in the background.
And I'll come back to the 2. And there's more. You can see just behind your seat.
Yeah, I can see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, it's much.
Yeah, and I can't say often enough, this is not scientific, this is not even fair, but we're just pointing out the obvious differences. So there you are. I think that's about it. Thanks to Sony for letting us compare these two cameras. The FS5 has always been impressive, like the FS7, and it's been great being able to compare the two. We think there's something in it, and please let us know if you've seen anything yourselves. Anyway, Simon, do you want to come back for a minute? We've only got another 5 minutes or so left, but we've got a fair number of questions I just want to go through quickly. So here's a question. It's going back to the eGPU. Dave, you wrote about Moore's law no longer being relevant when it comes to GPUs. Is the new Blackmagic GPU an example of that? $700 seems too good to be true. Well, I mean, it is a good price. I was basically saying that Moore's law actually doesn't really apply to the way GPUs are growing, because all you have to do with those is keep adding more of the same. The components don't have to get smaller. You just make a bigger chip and you keep adding them. It's very loose. You need to read the whole article, really. Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's the right product at the right price, isn't
definitely.
it?
Certainly.
So what's the main difference between buying an FS5 II rather than the original FS5? Are there any distinguishable differences?
Well, the FS5 II obviously has the standard options like the high frame rate and the raw output built in. I'm not sure if they're changing the Mark I so that it has those options as standard. I know they were offering the upgrade to existing owners, I think. But
yeah, I have a feeling that because there was a license to pay, wasn't there, for those features? And I haven't seen anything that suggests that is changing.
I had a feeling that might have changed.
Okay,
but we'll have to check on it. But it comes with those features as standard. I think you still need to have the additional MPEG 422 option if you want that. Our lone camera doesn't have that on there. And obviously you get the new colour science.
Yeah, and the colour science is the big deal. I think it's a big enough deal that you would want to upgrade, I think, to the new camera. But the original camera still has a strong case for it, for using with, in traditional roles.
Yes, certainly.
And
I think it's a case of if you already have an FS5. You've got the option of upgrading to the raw output, which is very useful. But if you're in the market for a new camera, then the FS5 II's new colorimetry is very compelling. Now that I've seen the differences for myself,
because I have to be honest, we weren't sure at first. We weren't sure what we were looking for, were we? And then all of a sudden we saw it, and once you've seen it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah, you can't unsee it. It's very, very, very true.
So why should I upgrade to the new MacBook Pro? Isn't it a bit overpriced? Well, there's a controversial, a whole room full of controversy, isn't it?
There is, but I think if you price computers up component for component, precise component to component, you often find that a PC with the same costs very similar amount of money. And I know Apple say that having OS. The Mac OS is also an additional benefit, but I don't think it's overpriced. You're paying for that convenience, you're paying for that solidity and everything else, and I think it's a non-argument really. I think it's always pushed, but I don't.
My point would be exactly that. Why argue about it? Nobody's forcing you to buy one.
That's also very, very true.
Yeah. So, well, look, that's just about it for today. I just want to say we'll be back soon, I think in about 2 weeks. I also want to say that we've got actually IBC coming up, unbelievably, which is the European, if you like, equivalent to NAB in the sense that it is a very, very big show that's coming up in September. We are having an event there called RedShark Connect. You'll be reading all about that in RedShark. And Simon, do you want to get back to the switcher so that we can wind this up nicely? And the NAB New York in October. Meanwhile, I'm off to Switzerland tomorrow for a press conference, and I'm under NDA. I can't say anything about it. which is easy to maintain because I don't know anything about it. So that's what I'm doing at 4:30 tomorrow morning. But you'll read about that in RedShark very soon. So that's about it. Thanks everybody as usual. Great to have you. You'll be able to play this back as soon as YouTube does its back-end stuff. And meanwhile, as ever, comment on our articles, write to editor@redsharknews.com if you have anything you want to say to the editorial team. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.